It's my privilege to introduce Ron Berger, a globally respected leader in education. Widely known for inspiring schools around the world to cultivate learning that builds quality, character, and citizenship at its core. Ron currently serves as Senior Advisor at EL Education, a leading non-profit organization that partners with public schools and districts across the United States to advance professional learning and develop open educational resources. He is the author of several acclaimed books, including An Ethic of Excellence, A Culture of Quality, Leaders of Their Own Learning, Transformational Literacy, Management in the Active Classroom, Learning That Lasts, and We Are Crew. A former professor at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, Ron also founded and directs Models of Excellence, the Center for High Quality Student Work, home to the world's largest collection of exemplary K-12 student work. Before his academic and advisory roles, Ron spent more than 25 years as a public school teacher and master carpenter that earned him the Autodesk Foundation National Teacher of the Year Award. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Ron Berger as he shares his keynote address. Please. Beautiful work, inspiring and cultivating brilliant student work. Mr. Ron Berger.
Thank you, Rom. I am so honored to be here with you all today. This is my first trip to Pakistan. I just arrived yesterday. And I have to say, there's no place in the world where I have traveled where people have been more gracious. I had the gift yesterday of visiting 2 Beacon House schools, and the students were so happy to be there, so excited to share the things they're grappling with and learning. It was an inspiring day for me and made me feel like I am so lucky to be in Pakistan. One of the best graduate students I ever had at Harvard University in America, Miss Salma Alam, returned after her time at Harvard to Pakistan. And when I arrived yesterday, I thought, she's somewhere in this country, but I have no contact for her. I'll have no way to find her. I know she's in education. And then an hour or two ago, she came up and introduced herself to me because she's here today. I'm so proud to have an educational leader here in Pakistan as one of my students from Harvard University. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank the Kasuri family for your amazing legacy of work. And I'm here to talk to you about my passion, which is beautiful work. And when I say beautiful work, speaking to all of you teachers and leaders and students, I'm not just talking about aesthetically beautiful work. I'm talking about beautiful work in mathematics, in history, in science, in literature, beautiful acts of kindness and consequence in the world, things that are done beautifully. And that's what I think can change the world. So when I travel around the world, people are always saying to me, Ron, if we only had a little bit more time with our students, if we had more days, in the year, if we had more hours in the day, then we could make them smarter. And I'm here to tell you, that's just not true. So if we want children, all of our students, to do better, increasing time in the classroom is not the answer. There is only one international measure of student performance. Pakistan is not a part of this measure. It's the PISA test. It's given to 15-year-olds in many countries, over 100 countries. Pakistan doesn't happen to be one of them, so you don't need to worry about me sharing anything about Pakistan's results, good or bad. But all the countries in the world are ranked by this one test. This is what it looks like. Every time they rank the schools, every country gets upset with where are we on the international rankings. But here's the interesting thing. This chart, which you can't really read from where you are, but I'll try to interpret it for you, has the amount of hours students spend in the classroom on the x-axis, the horizontal axis. The further off to your right, the more hours in school. On the y-axis, the vertical axis, is how well those countries do on the one international exam, the PISA. If there were a correlation between those two, the graph would easily go up with a trend line. There is absolutely no correlation in that graph. And in fact, there are countries on the very far left on the x-axis who are the highest performing countries in the world who spend the least amount of time standing in front of students. So if there's no correlation between the hours students are sitting listening to teachers and how smart they are, how well they do, why are we here? Like, what are we talking about? It's not about the amount of time students are in the classroom. It's about how we use the time we have with students. And that's why I was so pleased to be in Beacon House Schools yesterday, where I saw students and teachers alive with passion for their work, using their time well. We often say, well, these students just don't happen to be motivated. They're not passionate. That just, maybe it's their family, maybe it's their neighborhood. I don't think that's true. I think every student in the world is passionate about learning and very metacognitive and insightful about their learning. It's just that it's not always about the learning that we're compelling them to do in school. That happens when there's a public performance in some way of their work, when they feel like there's a purpose for their work, as Richard shared this morning. These are some of the kinds of things where I see students being passionate. So when I go around the world and speak to students, I meet individual students and I say, tell me something you're passionate about, that you're learning right now. And they tend to use examples like this. They'll say football, robotics, Model UN, debate, dance, theater, cricket, chess. They are passionate about these things. And then, if I ask them about their learning in them, they are passionate to talk to me about their learning in them. How do we get that same kind of passion connected to kids' academic learning? It's by giving the opportunity to have that learning have a purpose and be public. Making learning public, making a performance as a part of learning, and focusing on beautiful work. Let me give I'm going to give you many examples of beautiful work today. Examples from all over the world, because like Richard, I have this gift of being able to travel around the world and meet inspiring educators and students. But I'm going to start as an example of beautiful work from yesterday at I-9 school right here in Islamabad, when these two students interviewed me for their podcast and had researched my career and asked me more thoughtful questions than most adult podcasters do. I work for a nonprofit organization called EL Education, based in the States. It's about educating for a better world. We had two different places for our origin. We were born from a marriage between Harvard University and Outward Bound, the wilderness organization that's focused on character. And so our vision of education is three-dimensional, not one-dimensional. Just like Beacon House, we believe we want to create smart human beings who are also good human beings. And so when we say three-dimensional achievement, we mean mastery of academics as well as character and achievement. And high-quality work, the quality of work students do. When our students, all of you who are there upstairs, when you are done with schooling and enter your adult lives, you will be judged by two things. There are two ways we will value you: the kind of human being you are and the kind of work that you do. It will no longer be about exams. It will no longer be about artificial school measures. The quality of your work and the quality of who you are as a human being is how the world will judge you, how the world will value you, no matter what job you take. When we looked at the impressive alumni of Beacon House Schools this morning, all kinds of jobs, it's not about what job they chose, it's about the integrity and the quality with which they do that job. And you think about this without thinking about it. So if you go into surgery, you hope your surgeon is really good at what they do. If you get on a plane, you hope your pilot is really good at what they do. If you call a plumber or someone to help you at your home, you hope they are really good at what they do. It does not matter whatever profession or trade you go into, having that quality of work ethic makes all the difference in the world. That's part of my obsession with beautiful work. When I talk about high quality work, I don't just mean attractive work. I mean work that has complexity and craftsmanship and authenticity. And when students do work that they are deeply proud of, it changes who they are. It gives them a new belief and a new sense of their potential. So I am fortunate enough to travel around the world and meet students. These are students in the Bronx of New York City who have done project work that's so beautiful that they have these kinds of faces, these faces of pride. Like, can you believe I did this? And for me, no student would say, oh, my exam scores were good, and have that look on their face. This is, I created this. I made this. This is my work. And that student will never settle for less in her life now because she knows she's capable of that. I met students yesterday at a Beacon House school that did work like this, that they were so proud of. And I saw public displays of student work at Beacon House schools right here in Islamabad that were incredibly well done and public. This is sharing work with the world. This is making work a performance that students can be proud. I did this. This is my work. So I want to take you on a journey to some different places in the world where I've seen beautiful student work and share some stories with you. I'm going to start in the United States, in a state called Idaho. It's a rural state. This is what the view is from the front of this elementary primary school. Here's the project I want to describe to you. Students in this school were paired with a local animal shelter where stray animals are brought in. And if they're adopted, it's great. If they're not adopted, they're killed. Each student was paired with an individual animal. And so their job was to get that animal adopted. They couldn't adopt it. Their parents or grandparents that they live with were not going to say, you can bring home Freddie Mercury. However, they learned the story of the animal they were paired with and then drew a compelling portrait of that animal to make a poster to be put up in town. And along with that poster, there was a poem that they wrote about the life of that animal. And so the poem and the photograph and the portrait they had drawn was put together on a large poster, and those posters were put up all over this farming town in places where people had to wait, like doctor's offices and dentist offices and motor vehicle registry sites. And so all day long, people would look at pictures like Bella the dog and read the poem about Bella's life. And you can imagine what happened. Within days, the school started to get phone calls. Freddie Mercury was adopted. Angelina was adopted. And every time a phone call came into the school, the principal, the head teacher of the school, stopped school, went over the loudspeaker, and made the announcement of what animal's life had just been saved by the work of a 9-year-old student in this school. And the students in the school stood up, they cheered, and they cried. And I went to this school because I thought, I need to meet those students who did that beautiful work. I met those students who were 10 years old, and I said, what did you learn from this? And they said, Mr. Berger, we learned if we did beautiful work, we could change the world. We've already saved the lives of animals by the quality of our work. Thank you. I said, why didn't you just take photographs of these animals? Why didn't you just take a picture of Bella and put it on the poster? And they said, Mr. Berger, in America, there's always pictures of lost cats and dogs that people stick on telephone poles. Nobody looks at them. They said, we needed to handcraft a beautiful portrait with eyes that made you love that animal, a hand-done piece of artwork that would stop people and make them think, oh my gosh, look at Bella. I want that dog. And we did draft after draft after draft of those portraits and showed them to our friends and got critique because we watched the movie Austin's Butterfly and we knew how to do that. And that's why our work was powerful. Not just because we had the idea, but because it was beautifully done. So, of all the things I've done in my career, and I've been in education for 49 years, this one 5-minute video is the way most people know me and all of my work. But I'm okay with that. I'm going to show that video now. Some of you have seen it, because if you ask a musician to come on stage and they don't play their greatest hit, it's disappointing. And then I want to tell you about other schools where this video was shown and how it's impacted their work. So, here's the video, Austin's Butterfly, that's over 10 million views right now. What would you guys say to teachers if they're not getting high quality work? Could they learn something from this? And what would you say to them that they could do differently in their classrooms? This is a story called Austin's Butterfly. And it's a true story about a first grade boy, and his name is Austin, and he goes to school, or used to go to school, in a town called Boise, Idaho. And in his class in Boise, Idaho, they were studying butterflies, and he had to do a project. His job in first grade was to draw a butterfly, and this is the butterfly that he picked. Austin had to use this photograph as his model, and he had to draw an accurate scientific drawing of this butterfly. This is called a tiger swallowtail.
I knew it!
Can you tell, Toby, why it's called tiger?
Because it kind of has the stripes of the tiger right there.
Good. So, here was Austin's job. He was supposed to do a scientific drawing of that butterfly. But remember, Austin was only in first grade. And you know what he did? He forgot to look like a scientist carefully. He got his paper and he just started to draw the image of a butterfly that he had in his head. And he wasn't looking like a scientist, and so this is what he drew.
Whoa.
It's not bad, and it is a butterfly, but does it look exactly like this?
No.
No, it doesn't yet. It doesn't look exactly like this yet. And so they didn't look at this and say, good, Austin, you're done. They said, Austin, good start. Now we can start giving you critique so you can do a second draft and make it better, and a third draft and make it better, and you can make it much, much closer to this, and he was ready to go. All of the first graders in his critique group sat on the floor like you guys are, and they decided to split their advice into two kinds. First, just the shape of the wings. And then when the shape was right, they'd give him advice about the pattern inside the wings. Alia, what would you say?
You can make it much pointier.
Good. These wings could be much pointier. Who else would add something? Atak, what would you say?
How about the angle? Because, not to be mean about
Yes.
the angle, it's just not exact, so...
Okay, so show me. Come on up here, Atak. Show me what you would ask him to do slightly differently.
Like to make it a little longer,
Longer where? Draw where you would do it.
right there.
Okay, so pull this out longer.
Yeah.
That's very specific, Atak. Thank you. Jamila, what would you say?
It's like triangle.
Good. Jamila, I love that. So you're saying more like a triangle shape. And I agree. Well, you know what? Those first graders came up with most of those same ideas. And you know what Austin said? He said, okay, I'll go try. And he went back to his seat and he drew this.
Wow.
Does this look more like a triangle?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did he go out further, like Atak was suggesting?
Yeah.
Did he add some jaggedness here?
Yes.
Like Cindy? Did he get rid of that bottom thing?
Yes.
So he did listen to his friends, and he made it better. It's not perfect. Toby, what would you say?
I'd say don't put those little tail things so pointed in. I'd say put them more pointed down.
Good. Okay, Ethan, what would you say?
I think you should make the wings like this, not like this.
Okay, he listened to his friends, and they said, this is really a lot better, Austin. That second draft really is better.
Yeah, maybe you can make a third one.
Good. Maybe he could make a third draft. And so he did this draft.
That's his third draft.
That's his third draft, Hadley. That's just right. Elijah, what do you notice there?
Well, one wing's more pointed than the other, and that side is a little bit higher than the others.
Good. Coburn?
Right here, it doesn't have the inside thing still.
Ah, okay. Needs a little bit more of that notch. So, do you think maybe he should do a fourth draft?
Yeah.
Well, that's just what he said. He said, shoot, okay, I got round again. I'll go back and do a fourth draft. He listened. Does it look more even like Elijah was suggesting?
Yes.
Yeah, and does it look like it's coming out a little sharper, like Cindy was suggesting? And like Atak was saying, the angle looks a little better. So now Austin was feeling really good. He said, am I ready to add some pattern? And they said, okay, why don't you try adding some of the pattern? And he did.
He's good at it.
He is so good.
And then they said, Austin, you're ready for color.
Really?
Let's look at his last draft. And what do you think? Did it come out really good?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about how much progress he made? And Tak, what would you say about his progress?
He made like a lot of progress. He persevered doing it. His friends were honest with him.
What was it about the kinds of advice that they gave that allowed him to get better each time? Hassan?
Well, they told him what was wrong about it.
Did they say it's just wrong, or were they more specific than
They
that?
were more specific, but they weren't mean about it.
Great. Hadley.
Made 6 drafts.
And so is that something that other kids should learn from? What should we learn from that?
You can make other drafts if it's not right.
Good. So if it's not right, you can keep doing more drafts to make it better.
You just don't use things in your head. You want to use a sharp eye.
Good. He used the eyes of a scientist. Great. So I want to give you a quick update. There was a very thoughtful student in that video named Atak. He was from Somalia. He was a 4th grader, 10 years old in that video. He's the one who said, not to be mean, but it's just not quite right. And he's the one who said, he made a lot of progress. He persevered when he did it. That thoughtful student did some brilliant work in his middle school years. And so when he turned to a high schooler, the age of some of you that are in the audience up there, I asked him if he'd be our keynote speaker at our national educational conference in America to speak to 1,200 people. He gave a speech to 1,200 people. It was his first time in his life leaving his city, his first time in his life being on an airplane. And he said, Austin's butterfly has been the metaphor for my life. If I get advice from my friends and my teachers and my family, and I keep trying to make myself better, I can become a better human being. I don't have to settle for an early draft of myself. It was beautiful. I've stayed in touch with Atak, and he's just graduated from university. So proud. So, all over the world, people have reached out to me and said, oh, we used Austin's butterfly, and I want to share with you what our students did. So some high school students from Barnsley, England, had watched Austin's butterfly. This was during the pandemic, and their high school was right next to a hospital. And the students wanted to do some service because during the pandemic, people were dying in the hospital and their loved ones couldn't even visit them. So they went to the hospital next door and said, how could we help? And the leaders of the hospital said, could you do something to raise the spirits of our staff, our nurses and our aides and our doctors? They are so dispirited. They are so saddened to be losing so many people to COVID. And so the students met the staff and took their pictures and then did portraits of each staff member. And each portrait was done by a student in a medium that they chose. And they framed those portraits and hung them in the entryway to the hospital. So now when you enter the hospital, if you're a nurse or you're an aide, you see your picture framed as a hero. An amazing, amazing piece of work. Everyone shows art, and they did draft after draft to honor those heroes. But then the students said, we want to do something for the patients of the hospital too. So sitting at a distance, they interviewed patients. And they said, is there anything we can do for you as patients, isolated in the hospital here during COVID, when you can't see your loved ones? And they said, well, there's a blank wall in our hospital that we walk by every day. Could you paint something to brighten our spirits? And so the students painted a mural of the downtown of the city on that wall, so that every day when the patients walk by that wall, they see this beautiful scene of the downtown of their city that they may never see again. Those are the students who painted that. I want to tell you about a school right near where I live in Massachusetts of the US, where students did beautiful work, and it has amazing results. Their school is in a city with high poverty. There are 8 high schools in this city, and 7 of them are failing. 60% of students are graduating, but 40% are dropping out before graduation from high school. But this school is graduating 98% of its students on time, and 100% of graduates have gotten into university for the past 18 years consecutively. 18 years in a row, every single student has gotten into university. These are low-income students from poor families whose parents did not go to university. How the heck are they doing this? Well, they have a morning group called Crew, an advisory group, where they meet every single day. It's a support group, but an accountability group, where students are in a family where they're held accountable to succeed. So it has that family care that I saw in the Beacon House schools yesterday. The relationships between teachers and students, just like I saw yesterday in Beacon House schools, are very tight and close. Students, no students anonymous in this school. And they have the chance to do beautiful work. Let me give you one example. The students created a report for the city called a green print, a blueprint for a greener city, a more sustainable city, like Beacon House stands for. Students were trained by city engineers to go into the schools all over the city and do testing to see how much energy was being well used and how much was being lost. They tested boilers, they tested insulation, they tested appliances, they tested the lighting. They did all the testing that the professional engineers in the city did because the engineers taught them how to do it. And then they created a report for the city that asked the city to invest $156,000 to renovate the school buildings. And they did a cost-benefit analysis, and they guaranteed the city that if it invested this money within 5 years, they'd be saving money. All the money would be made back, and the energy savings would more than pay for every renovation they did. They gave this report on a television press conference. And so the mayor of the city couldn't ignore it. The mayor got very upset. He went back to his staff and said, now I have to respond because they were on television. I'm going to look really bad if I say the students are wrong. I'm going to look really bad if I don't invest the money. What should I do? And his staff said, we read their report. We think they're right. Our engineers trained them. We looked at their math. Their math looks right to us. You should invest the money. So he held a press conference on television and he said, we're going to invest $156,000 to make our schools more energy efficient with new light bulbs and new appliances and new insulation and new window treatments. And we're going to save all of you taxpayers money within 5 years. Then he came to the school and got on stage and said, you students better be right about this. And the students were a little scared. Within 2 years, they had saved more than 160,000 US dollars. They had made all their money back within 2 years. Every year after that, the city was saving money. The mayor then came back to the school and he said, we just set aside $250,000 to have you inspect all of our city buildings so we can renovate those as well. And the students are still going around to city buildings and acting as adult engineers because they are invested in beautiful work with a purpose. That's why 100% of those students are getting into university every single year. I want to bring you quickly up to the mountains. This is very much like North Pakistan, except our mountains are not nearly as big. But some of you who've been to the north of Pakistan know what I'm talking about the beauty of these mountains. So this is a little rural school up in the mountains in America. And this school serves two kinds of people. Local indigenous people who have a reservation, Paiute Indians, and ranchers. So basically, you're either a cowboy or an Indian in this school. The kids don't fight. They get along really well because they're committed to beautiful work. But it's the white cowboy students and the Indian indigenous students all working together, and they share the passion that Nasreen Kusuri spoke about today for protecting the environment and stopping pollution because the ranchers believe in it and the Native American Indians believe in it. And so those students are outside all the time doing original research to protect the environment where their rural school lives. It's a beautiful thing to watch. And when I walk through the school, everywhere I go, there's beautiful work on the walls. The walls are like a gallery, like an art museum or a science museum of beautiful work. And that work goes through multiple drafts because all those students watched Austin's Butterfly, and none of them are willing to settle for a first draft. Their work is beautifully done. And they did an amazing thing a few years ago. The girl in this photo is named Alice Piper, and 100 years ago, she was an American Indian student, a Native American indigenous student who was not allowed to go to a white school. It's a terrible part of our history as a nation. But back then, all Native American Indians were sent to schools like this, where they were taken away from their families, their hair was cut off, and they were beaten if they used their native language, and they were beaten with sticks if they followed their native faith, their religion. because at that time, people in America thought we need to make these children white and Christian. This young girl, Alice Piper, and her family sued to allow her to go to the school that the white children went to instead of this boarding school. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and she won. And she was the first Indian student in America to attend, Native American Indian student in America to attend a white school. So, there is now a statue of her in front of that school where she attended. That statue was done by students. They raised the money and created the campaign to have a sculptor make this statue. And last year, they hosted a symposium for Native American Indians for all over America to attend a celebration of 100 years of civil rights and social justice in America. This was student-run. That's beautiful work. And those students are being the first in their families to go to university because of their pride in their beautiful work. I'm going to bring you quickly to Washington, D.C., which has a lot of beautiful buildings, but also has a lot of homeless people who don't even have a place to live. And I want to show you this group of young students who were worried about the problem of homelessness in their city. And so they had homeless people right around their school. And as part of their project on homelessness, their driving question, just like the driving questions I saw in all the project-based learning classrooms I went into yesterday in Beacon House schools, these students were, what can we do as young people to help the homeless in America? And the first thing they did was they got blankets, they got food, they got things to help the people right outside their building. But they told me even more than that, we met them and we learned their names. And we spoke to them every morning. And they became human to us, not scary. And then they decided, we learned that homeless people lost more than their homes. They kind of lost their identity. And so by learning their names and talking to them every day, we gave them some happiness in every day. And so they created an ABC book of homelessness and made 100 copies of it and distributed it to kindergartens all over Washington, D.C., where every page is a letter of the alphabet and a message about the homeless. L is for lonely. I'm lonely because people don't notice me. And then they drew a picture of loneliness. So 100 copies of this book were read aloud or read by kindergartners all over DC. A young boy named Clarence was in that classroom, and I said to Clarence, "What's your page in the homeless book?" He said, "Mr. Berger, my page is H is for heart. Homeless people have heart because they help other homeless people." And I said, "Do you think your project on homelessness made a difference, Clarence?" And he said, "It made all the difference in the world, Mr. Berger." And I said, "Tell me more," because there were still homeless people around his school. They hadn't solved the problem. He said, "The homeless people are our friends now. And every morning we look forward to seeing them, and they look forward to seeing us. Everything has changed." And I thought, what a beautiful perspective. So Clarence said, "Mr. Berger, you're a little bit famous, so can I give you a copy of our book so you can talk about it around the world?" And I said, "I would be happy to share your book, Clarence." And then I came back in the spring, and Clarence said, "Mr. Berger, a more famous person than you came to our school," and I gave him a copy. So I'm more excited about that. And I said, "Who is this famous person you gave a copy to?" And he said, "It's the president." So Richard just shared with you that right after President Obama's inauguration, Richard was able to meet with him and speak with him. And I, over lunch, learned that story, which since President Obama was a personal hero of mine, I was so envious. Clarence got to meet the president and first lady and gave him a copy of the Book of Homelessness. And I just thought, that's the coolest thing in the world. He is way more famous than I am and way more important, Clarence. I'm so happy for you. So I was in the school recently, and I was walking down the hallway, and this young man came up to me, and he said, "Mr. Berger," and I said, "I'm sorry, do I know you?" And he said, "It's Clarence, it's me, Clarence." And I said, "You mean H is for heart? Homeless people have heart, Clarence?" And he said, "You remember my page. I love that." I said, "What are you doing here now?" He said, "I teach here now." I thought, I love it. I love it that he's now a teacher at this school. What a beautiful arc. So for 28 years, I was in the classroom before I was at Harvard. And I live in a small town where there are not people paid to do things. There is no paid workers because it's rural. And so I had my students do the work that paid scientists and engineers and people in other towns do. So we weren't sure if there was water pollution in my town. So I had my students, these are 5th and 6th graders, so 10, 11-year-olds. I had them trained at the university to test every stream and lake in town and test to see if there was water pollution. They created maps about how things were, and they created a report for the town about the pollution or lack of pollution in every stream or wetland in the town. That report is still hanging up in the town hall of my small rural town. And the young man on the right wearing goggles, I want to show you him today. He's now an emergency room nurse in the city nearest to where I live. After university, he went into science, just like I would have hoped. And we weren't sure if the water we were drinking was safe to drink. So my students went back to the university and they learned how to do well testing, water testing, using an inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometer. People said to me, "How can you let 10-year-olds run a machine that costs $500,000? And I said, "Oh, if I put a 10-year-old and you on a couch and I gave you a new video game, who would learn it faster?" And everyone says, "Oh, the 10-year-old would definitely learn the video game faster than I." I said, "Why is a mass spectrometer any different? You don't think these 10-year-olds could learn how to use that mass?" They were like, "Oh yeah, I guess you're right." These students ran a mass spectrometer and tested everyone's water in town to see if there were dangerous elements. And they sent a private letter to everyone who lived in town, including my wife and I, who now have a water filtration system because my students discovered problems in my own drinking water. And this report went out to everyone in town, and it turned out we were the first town in the state that had a comprehensive picture of groundwater. And so we got requests from all over the state, and students had to print and staple and mail copies of this report to cities and towns all over the state. While they were 10 and 11-year-olds, they were running a nonprofit business in my room, giving the results of their scientific studies to the world. That young woman, Elena, I want to show you today. She is now a teacher in New York City. Makes me so proud to watch these students, like the alums we saw this morning, grow up to do great things in the world. We didn't have a playhouse for the kindergartners, and so my students designed and built a playhouse for the little kids in my school. That is beautiful work. That young man standing in front of the playhouse became a carpenter. I saw him in the lumber yard this year. He said, "Mr. Berger, I just finished a house. Do you want to see it?" So I got in my truck, he got in his truck, I followed him, and he showed me this house that he had just built. And he brought me inside, and I thought, he's learned a little bit since I taught him carpentry when he was 11. That's beautiful work, that kind of craftsmanship. In New York City, there are students at this school where 100% of graduates are also being accepted to university, and it's the most diverse school in the entire city of New York. Every different nationality from all over the world is represented in that school. And they do graduate level science when they're in high school. I have a video for this. I'm going to skip that video for now. But I will tell you that it is a great example of when students are doing beautiful work, We'll go right through these. Anything is possible. When students are passionate about things in their life, it's amazing. So now in my work, I go around the world and I meet a student and I ask them, what's something you're passionate about? I asked a young lady today of 9 years old what she was passionate about over breakfast. I won't out her by sharing what she shared, but I have a lot to learn about. I had to learn about it a little bit right away from her. Whenever I ask a student what he or she is passionate about, they're so excited to tell me. And then I say, okay, given that thing, here are 3 questions for you. What are you good at? What are your strengths in that area? And they can immediately tell me, whether it's football or cricket or chess or Model UN or drama or dance. They're like, oh, this is what I'm good at right now in football. And then I say, what are the things these are the things I'm not good at yet. Every student can tell me that. And then I say, what's your growth edge? Because that's my biggest interest. What are you working on getting good at right now? And they can tell me exactly. Whether it's chess, whether it's dance, whether it's video games, doesn't matter. They can tell me, this is what I'm working at getting good at on the guitar right now, on the violin right now, in my debate right now. This is in my robotics. This is what I'm working on right now. And that's so exciting for me. That's what I want students to be able to do when you ask them about their mathematics or their writing or their history or their science. That kind of passion. So I'll just go through a few quick examples. When I was in the Bronx, I met all these students who brought work they were proud of. I met a young man named Taj who was working on his early writing, and he was so excited to share his growth as a writer in 1st grade. I met this girl as a 5th grader, Jacqueline Tolentino, who's working on the beauty of her writing as a 5th grader. And she specifically said, my growth edge is the opening and closing of my pieces. And the closing of her piece, hence, Esperanza's story is not only one of a privileged young girl's reversal of fortune, but also starting over. I thought, wow, Jacqueline, you are working on your growth edge and already getting good at it. Thank you. And now Jacqueline is a 7th grader. And when I met with her this year, still working on her writing. I met Larissa Valdez, who's working on her drawings and trying to figure out how to figure out her identity through her drawings. And her series of drawings were powerful as herself as a city kid, herself as a skater, herself as an artist, herself as a musician, herself and her connection to her faith. All of these drawings were her working out her identity. Who is she as a human being? And I met with her this spring, and she was about to graduate and go on to high school. And I said, what have you discovered about her identity? And she said, I have to be who I am, and I have to help my grandparents understand me. But she got into a prestigious art school for high school, and that's where she is now. I went to Doncaster, England. I met this young woman, Arina Barashkova, who's Latvian. I said, what's your passion? She said, my passion is visual art. And I said, okay, what are your strengths? And she said, I'm really good with color and really good at blending. I see color that other people don't see. I said, can you show me an example? She said, can I get you my portfolio? I said, sure. So she brought her portfolio and she showed me this drawing. And I thought, oh my goodness, she is really good with seeing color and blending color. And everything I looked at in her portfolio was like this. It had this power of capturing color that you wouldn't normally see in a student. And I said, Arina, what is your growth edge? And she said, black and white. I've been working in color so long, and my teacher is making me shift to black and white, and I'm totally freaked out. I said, how are you doing with your growth edge? She said, here's my painting in black and white. Here's my drawing in black and white. I'm really working on it. I thought, yes, you are working on your growth edge. It makes me so excited. to see that passion. She said, but you should meet my friend Rosie. Her growth edge is drawing people underwater with light on them. It's a crazy, specific growth edge, but she's obsessed with it. And she's doing all these paintings of people underwater. And I thought, now I have to meet Rosie. Students who are passionate about their work is the coolest thing of all. And I'm going to end in South Australia with this young man. This is my last story for you today. This young man is named Sam. And when I met him, he was a high school student about the age of many of you in the audience. And I met Sam and he said, Mr. Berger, the first thing you need to know about me is that I am not neurotypical. I said, good to know, Sam. He said, I am neurodivergent. Do you know what that means? And I said, I do, Sam. I have many friends who are neurodivergent. He said, it means I'm on the autism spectrum and social things are not easy for me. And I said, thank you for being so direct with me, Sam. But I have some questions for you. Do you have a passion? And he said, my passion is popcorn. I said, again? He said, my passion is popcorn. I make my own popcorn. He said, since I was a little kid, I've been obsessed with popcorn. He said, do you know how some people who are autistic are really obsessed with something and really good at it? I said, I do know that. He said, well, I'm obsessed with popcorn and I'm really good at making it. He said, it started when I was 10 and I started making my own popcorn and selling it. And they put an article in the local paper. And now my popcorn is selling all around Australia. I said, are you making money from your popcorn? He said, I have 147 distributors currently. I said, can I ask how much money your popcorn is bringing in? And he said, Mr. Berger, that is proprietary information. And I said, can you give me just a sense? And he said, well, if it helps you at all, I donated 40,000 Australian dollars to charity last year from my proceeds. So clearly, you know, I'm making more than $200,000 per year of gross income. But I won't tell you exactly the figures. And I thought, oh my goodness, this kid's in high school. He's bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars of gross income. He's neurodivergent and using his difference to make good for the world, giving away $40,000 to charity when he's 16 years old. And then when I was leading a teacher group for teachers, I noticed a woman eating Sam's popcorn. And I said, I got to meet Sam. And she said, I'm his mother. Who do you think drives him to 147 distributors? Because he doesn't drive. I said, he told me he has a commercial van. And she said, yeah, I'm driving it. She said, I want him to get even more rich so he can hire a driver. And then I realized, oh, she looks just like Sam, of course. So the end of the message is, it doesn't matter who you are if you have that passion for doing great and beautiful work. Sam is a neurodivergent student, a student that many people would have said he's autistic. What potential does he have? And he's donating $40,000 to charity every year through his brilliant work. I am so honored to be here where Beacon House schools have changed the lives of millions of students, the kinds of alums you saw here today. It's totally inspirational for me. And I'll be taking the stories from Pakistan to share all around the world, wherever I travel now, of the beautiful work that you are doing. Thank you.